And we are back, another edition of How About Them Celtics, talking C's with Bobby Kravitsky of SI Media Group. Bobby, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Nice West Coast road trip headed for the
Mm.
C's. I'll be covering it remotely, which makes
hmm
things, it's not comfortable being detached, but it certainly is also more relaxing. So
That's what
we'll
I
see
was
what this
just gonna
has in
say.
store.
I was just gonna say, as I love being at the games, I love being at the Garden, I love being at the practices and being with the team. And obviously, we went to Philly for a little road action earlier this year. But like the fact that around the holidays, because my family's big on Christmas, like we can just kind of chill, road trip, hang out at home, just breathe a little bit. I'm not gonna say I was upset at the concept of it. I'll put it that way. But Celtics before the West Coast trip are fresh off a sweep of the Orlando Magic that came on the tail end of a 5-game homestand, of which the Celtics won every single game. Win over the Knicks, 2 wins over the Cavs, 2 wins, dominant wins, I should say, over the Orlando Magic, a team they had trouble with in the past. I think they had lost 4 straight games to Orlando before they picked up the 2 straight victories on Friday and Sunday. Big wins. Bobby, what are your biggest takeaways from those wins?
Yes, I believe it's the first time the Celtics have swept a homestand of 5 games or more since 2016. I
Oh.
believe is the correct year. So it's been a minute, and to do it against opponents that have given them trouble, and specifically because of the physicality they play with. And I know the Cavs didn't have Evan Mobley, but you look at what Orlando has done to the Celtics team. You mentioned it, 4 straight wins coming into the mini series. And that's some of the best ball the Celtics have played. They did it shorthanded on Friday, which made it more impressive. Plus, it was the second half of a back-to-back. And just Jaylen Brown, I think this 5-game stretch in particular is arguably the best of his career, where he really was the driving force in why the Celtics were playing with this up-tempo pace that is crucial to them being at their best.
Yeah, I mean, it was sick to see the Celtics play for real against Orlando. They meant every single one of the hard dunks that they threw down. You could tell both sides really wanted it. Jaylen Brown talked about how that felt like the biggest win of the season on Friday. And it was reflected in their play. And Joe Mazzulla was pumped up at the game yesterday. There's a video of him fired up doing the big fist bump on the side. And he said, more or less, the players need to see that kind of emotion from the coach every once in a while. And he felt like it was deserved because they're playing Celtics basketball. And I could not agree more, even though it is funny that the reaction comes after Jaylen hits a pull-up 3, just into the Mazzulla ball mindset there, which is fine. But man, it was awesome to see them not only win 5 straight games at home, but to bounce back after what was a disaster loss in Indiana. To me, I hated the way they melted down defensively. They couldn't buy a stop, and they lost an important tournament game. And they bounced back by beating the Knicks, Cavs twice, Magic twice, in 5 games that they had almost complete control of. They got off to slow starts against Cleveland once and Orlando once, but they came back, fought back, and dominantly won both of those games. It was great to see. It gave me a big boost in confidence for the Celtics as they head out to the West Coast to take on the Warriors tomorrow.
I agree. I mean, I've said this to Sam a bunch of times while we're recording and off air. That Joe Mazzulla fist pump video might be my favorite video of the season so far. Like every time I watch that, right? Obviously, as media, you're supposed to be unbiased and you try to be, but even as just a fan of basketball, watching a coach show that much emotion on the court is just so sick. Like he sees Jalen make the 3 and you see him be like fist pump, like, yeah, that's cool. And as soon as the timeout is called, he's just like, yeah, like he just gets fully amped, fully into it. I truly don't know how fans can be so against Joe Mazzulla after that video. Like that has to draw you in a little bit, right? Like that video, it was,
Based on my social media mentions, I think he definitely won some people over.
Okay, good.
And Sam, you referenced his answer to why he chose to let that out in that moment. Another part of his answer was defining what Celtics basketball means to him. And shameless plug, I wrote about this for Inside the Celtics about Mazzulla and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis. They all got asked that same question. What does Celtics basketball mean to you? And in particular, they're all great answers, but I love Jalen's would get the gold medal, in my opinion, where it starts with defense, laying the foundation for their success. And then he mentioned how they have to play up tempo and they have to take care of the ball and make the right reads. And even later on, he got into how they have to win. And Jack, you're going to love this. He got into how they have to be able to win when threes aren't falling. And he specifically referenced him and Jason's ability to score in the low post. And
Wow.
so to me, we've seen hot stretches from the Celtics before. They were on fire for the most part last season, going into that game against Golden State on the road. They had just blown out the Suns, and then they went to San Francisco, and it really knocked their season off kilter, and they started to deal with much more physicality after that loss at Chase Center. So now they go back to what's kind of been a house of horrors in a sense in recent years. And those are the keys, as Jaylen Brown described them, to making sure that this trip starting Tuesday is a successful one.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they have reinvented their game a bit this season, added the wrinkle of post play, like you mentioned, and have really started to lean on defense a bit more heavily, even though they were second ranked last year, I believe, has made the Celtics that much more difficult to beat. Because last year you could catch them on an off night and you could beat them because the threes weren't falling. And when that would happen, they really wouldn't know what to do. You saw it plenty in the playoffs. It's why they lost some of these games, especially when they got close. Now, with the ability to go low to Tatum and Brown and Porzingis, they are just so much more dangerous, especially with Jaylen Brown having his head on a swivel. As of late, I think he's only averaged 2 turnovers per game, and he's looked great moving the ball out of the low post in particular. He's in guys on the weak side corner. He's setting up teammates for open threes. He looks comfortable with the ball, just like Tatum does and just like Porzingis does. And that just makes the Celtics so dangerous because they don't necessarily need those guys to do all the scoring. They just need them to be able to capture enough attention for other guys to capitalize on it. We've seen Derek White have plenty of great games this year. We've seen Drew Holiday catch fire at times. Even Al Horford has had 18, 20-point games just because he's been in the right spots to take advantage of the defense. Going forward, they should have no problem continuing to exploit this because there's no real answer for the Celtics when they just play for real. I hope when they go out west, they bring that mentality with them because you saw it on the homestand. You saw them take Orlando seriously as they've kind of accepted this as a rivalry, as is the fan base, because everybody was very pumped about these 2 wins. And now you've got the Warriors who, like you said, Bobby, have beaten up on you. You lost to the finals. You went there last year. That's where things started to unravel a bit because you lost your first bad game of the year. Then you have both LA teams who you've gone back and forth with in some tight games. The Lakers in particular, both games went to double OT. On Christmas, as for Sacramento, you've handled them for the last 2 seasons. Just continue doing what you've been doing.
I agree. It all goes back to the Joe Mazzulla video for me. I love it. Love that they're playing the right way. Love that they turned it around. And to segue that, hopefully they can keep it up because they've got a pretty tough road stretch coming up. Celtics have a West Coast road trip that includes the Warriors, the Kings, the Clippers, and the Lakers, finishing on Christmas Day at Crypto.com Arena. It's still the Staples Center. I don't care. At the Staples Center against the Lakers. This is a big road trip. Sam and I just finished up recording our what is today? I lose track. Our Tuesday pod. That's going to be up tomorrow on the channel at 5 a.m. This will obviously be up before that because we're putting it up today. But we talked about the road trip a little. We talked about the Magic Sweep. The way I presented it on the pod that you'll hear again tomorrow if you listen to that is they're playing good enough to win. I don't necessarily expect them to sweep it because I never go into a big stretch of road trip. Like I didn't go into the homestand expecting a sweep because like as much as they are capable of it, that's just not how basketball works. So I'm not necessarily expecting a sweep, but it does feel like the Celtics are playing good enough where they are fully capable of sweeping this road trip. That said, some tough opponents here. Bobby, what are you looking for?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they've got another back-to-back coming up. They have to go from Tuesday against the Warriors to Wednesday against the Kings, and that explosive high-octane offense, that's going to be difficult to deal with. And again, it's a challenge of mental toughness and also the ability for everyone to take care of their bodies and have themselves physically ready to play and get your energy back up. And it's going to be really interesting to see because there was so much, to use that word again, energy exerted it takes to be able to play the swarming defense they showed against Orlando, where they did an excellent job of walling off drives and then swarming it and getting to the perimeter and contesting shots. Orlando for the series shot 43% from the field and committed 30 turnovers. That's outstanding. And it does, as Jaylen put it, lay the foundation for their success and why they were able to play in transition so frequently, as important as it is to also push off of makes when you can. And so if they can do that, as draining as it is, that's going to go a long way for their success. So it's just going to be interesting to see if they're able to maintain the mindset that went into what made them successful in this homestand.
Yeah, they've got big games. They should have a chip on their shoulder against at least 2 of these teams. Hopefully all 4 they find some kind of motivation because, one, you're running a win streak. Have fun with it. Get us all fired up. 5 games is great, but how great would it be if it got to 9 and you won on Christmas against the Lakers in LA? We would all be pumped. The Warriors are a team that the Celtics should get up for no matter what. In the past, they've done it. Ever since the Warriors got good, the Celtics have played them really well. Change in personnel that have been wearing green, they all kind of bring that same mentality. They play real hard, especially on the road. They've been pretty good aside from last season's visit there. Then playing against Sacramento again, you have beaten that team really, really handedly as of late. Continue doing what you're doing. They are for real. Keegan Murray just exploded for 12 threes. We talked about it on the show that'll come out tomorrow morning, but the insane 12 of 13 shooting output from Murray even had Steph Curry going nuts. So keep an eye out for them. Fox has always been pretty good, and Sabonis is out there setting guys up, setting hard screens and hitting the glass. I'm interested to see how they fare without Horford. I would hope that they sit him against Golden State because I feel like you almost need him less against the Warriors compared to when you have Sabonis to deal with on the other end. You're not going to have Draymond playing in that Warriors game. Looney is a beast on the glass, but I feel like you have a decent amount of bodies to throw at him, even with Horford out. And then, of course, beat those LA teams. The Clippers have won 8 of 10. They've turned it around after the Harden trade got off to a shaky start. And it's looking like they didn't just mortgage their future for nothing. They might actually get something out of it. And then anytime you play the Lakers, I mean, you better win. It's Christmas. Everyone's going to be watching. Don't embarrass yourselves.
Yeah, the way I look at it is I think the toughest games in that stretch are probably going to be the Warriors and the Clippers. I think the Lakers are a good team, but the Celtics should have the juice. I think they played the Kings well. Clippers are hot right now, though, and the Warriors always seem to have their number regardless of Draymond probably not, or definitely not playing in that game. They should do well on this road trip. You expect them to do well on this road trip, and then you come home to play the Pistons. So if you really want to keep it up, that's a good excuse to come home and keep it up. So you want to see them keep up that intensity. But as all this is going on, rumblings of the Celtics' potential involvement in the trade market are as well. We talked about this on the pod that comes out tomorrow at 5 a.m. a decent amount. Shams Charania doubled down on his previous reporting saying that, yeah, the Celtics are going to be involved trying to upgrade the bench on the trade market. And this is after, in between his two statements, Brian Windhorst of ESPN basically said, now they're going to be focused on the buyout market. Our thought process, spoiler alert, we get into it in depth on the show. There's not really a pathway for them to really get involved, barring, them just targeting some of these smaller contract guys. And at that point, is it that much of an upgrade over the bench? Bobby, what's your take on the whole Celtics being involved in the trade market thing?
I think that I'm sure they would love to feel more comfortable about what they have at that 4-5 spot. It's why in hindsight, losing Grant Williams is so difficult. And look, I was advocating in the moment to keep him, but at that juncture, he would have been the reason they went over the collective bargaining tax, which they had some flexibility on clearly, but it's a lot different when you decide to do it to get Drew Holiday, a 2-time All-Star, and someone who can be a core member of your roster, compared to Grant Williams coming off a season where he was often out of the rotation. And so now it's a question of, can they fill that spot, someone who can play the 4 and the 5 and give them a better layer of insurance in case they were to lose Porzingis or Horford and they miss time in the playoffs. And yeah, they have the draft capital moving forward. They have their first round picks from 2024 to 2027. They have 3 second-round selections in this upcoming draft. But financially, we're going to get into a player in just a second, so I won't reveal that name. But it's a prime example of, it doesn't seem realistic that they could even make the math work, let alone are they willing to sacrifice the players it would take to bring in a name like that?
Yeah. I mean, there really isn't a lot of great pathways for the Celtics to make any move of substance. Jack and I talked about it on the pod that'll go up tomorrow morning, but there's only a few names out there that could fit into the TPE that you would be like, oh yeah, like, okay, I know who that guy is. Maybe I would like the team to bring him in. But going back to Grant Williams, I kind of hate that they just gave up that free cap slot that they would have had by keeping him, because it could have made trades like this one more possible. It could have made something like going to get Alex Caruso feasible. At least if you want to go back, even at the end of the summer when they got Drew Holiday, they gave up Malcolm and they gave up Rob. They might not have had to give up both of those guys. They could have put Grant in there, still had the extra cap slot, and already had the third rotation big guy in Rob Williams, if they had kept him, to not even have this conundrum that they're dealing with now. Instead, they're really strapped with what they can do trade-wise, and it doesn't make for an easy path to getting anybody. The buyout market is what seems like it's going to be the most realistic option. They still have that roster spot open and seem pretty dead set on keeping it that way until there's something they can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you guys have both hinted at it, and I might just throw him in the thumbnail because it's probably the biggest piece of Celtics trade news. James Edwards III of The Athletic, again, we talked about this on the pod that goes up tomorrow morning, recently revealed that the Celtics, the Mavericks, and the Thunder have shown a level of interest in Isaiah Stewart. The issue is he's poison pilled, so he makes $5.3 million this season, but in order for the Celtics to acquire him, they need to give up $13-ish million in salary. Unless you're willing to give up Al Horford, that's close to impossible. We did the math on the pod. I'll reveal it to you here. They would literally have to give up everybody on the roster outside of the top 6 and Sam Hauser to make the money work. Peyton Pritchard, Jordan Walsh, all of the mid-level bench guys, including Luke Cornett, which don't really see happening for Isaiah Stewart. So as cool as it is, it seems pretty impossible. I'm curious to know your thoughts, Bobby, and barring a they should trade Al Horford stance, I can't imagine it's too dissimilar to ours.
And that's not my position, and they're not going to trade Al Horford. I love Beef Stew, but he also signed a 4-year, $60 million extension. So the average annual value of that contract is $15 million moving forward for a Celtics team that has so much committed to most of their top 6 already. And the expectation is that they extend Drew Holiday on top of that. So it's just not realistic financially that they're going to acquire Isaiah Stewart, as much as I'm sure that Brad Stevens loves him. And the other side of the coin, and James Edwards does an exceptional job covering the Pistons, so I don't doubt his reporting and him getting information from the Detroit side of it. But Brad Stevens moves in silence and has proven to be a shrewd poker player. And the other side of the deals that he makes, those partnerships have obliged in that secrecy. It's easier when you have a relationship with the Spurs franchise, for instance, and Greg Popovich, but it's not the only example where a deal has happened and it was off the radar. And so I do believe that the Celtics have checked in, that they'd love to get Isaiah Stewart, and hey, what's the price tag to make it happen? But again, the financial aspect of it makes this unrealistic.
Yeah, and also the James Edwards report from today could just be a re-report of what we heard earlier in the summer when it was reported they were interested in Stewart. The news part of that could be that the Thunder and who was the other team that was also interested? There was a third team. Dallas were both interested, which makes sense. They both kind of could use an extra body down low. The Celtics would have made more sense this summer before Stewart's contract became poison pill, and a deal could have been done without having to bind their hands completely like it would now. I don't really expect anything to get done on that front, but you never know. Sometimes you get surprised.
At least he gave us a talking point. This is something to talk about. Celtics Isaiah Stewart, even if the talking is no, which is pretty much what it's
even if we're shooting it down.
Yeah. But I just don't see the Celtics making any huge trades this season. It doesn't seem like it's going to be in the cards. It doesn't seem possible, like unless they're willing to trade Peyton Pritchard, which in my opinion doesn't make much sense with how well he's played and the value of his contract. Like, and even that, like even if they wanted to trade Peyton Pritchard, like the best they could get up to is around 10 mil. And you look at some of the guys who make 10 mil on teams that would be willing to trade the players, and you're like, it just doesn't move you very much, right? Like,
you know what I could see though, as at least a piece to the puzzle, is Brad Stevens, the front office, and Joe Mazzulla looking at two things, and that is Porzingis' health, even with the extension, and Al Horford's age, and saying this window that we have. And I know that ownership's talked about it as, I believe Wick Grossbeck said at Drew Holiday's introductory presser, a 6-year window, I believe is the number that he threw out there. But these next 2 years, it's easier to justify pushing your chips even further into the middle of the table right now because of those factors surrounding Horford and Porzingis than it is to wait a season. So maybe there is something, a move they make. And look, there's other needs where you could argue they need to add another wing off the bench to get more athletic in the second unit. And I think that's a fair point. But in particular, it's that layer of insurance behind Porzingis and Horford. And maybe they do decide, okay, what's the most aggressive we can be in bringing in an upgrade who fits that description?
Yeah, I mean, well, they already fumbled Daniel Tice. Could have got him after the buyout, and they didn't go after him. Shameful.
I think that was almost prearranged for him to get to the Clippers.
Sad from Tice. But with the rest of those guys, and Jack and I dropped some names on the podcast, there weren't any that were very interesting that were big guys. There was one, Precious Achiuwa. And even then, there's nobody that's like knock your socks off good that's going to fit into the TPE. Besides that, you're still pretty strapped. You don't get to combine the TPE with other salaries, so you can't reach those larger numbers unless you completely gut the team. It's just that simple. I really can't get behind any trade talk this year when the team's 20-5, and I get it. I get you want insurance. Those two guys absolutely have reasons to concern you about their availability down the line. Ugh, can't speak. But I don't know. Cornette's out there, and he's out there, and you're like, oh, he's not like making the team lose. He's not actively hurting them, which is all his job is the third string guy. But to your point, when he's asked to play more minutes, do you want it to be him, or do you want him to remain the third string guy? That's where it becomes a question.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like they're not going to do too much. It feels like the buyout market will be the bigger play if they even get active on that. I think we were using the wrong background this whole time. Yeah, there we go. There's the correct one. I updated and didn't update the name. Anyways, I think we covered all the points. Did we get everything we wanted to talk about? Did I miss anything?
Just one more on this topic I want to throw out there is Joe Mazzulla. I believe it was post-game Friday after the first win against the Magic, is that he didn't see it as going small because Porzingis, Horford, and Cornette were out as a challenge. And he was really focused on all the advantages that came with it. And especially with these restrictions on the trade market, maybe they just decide that it's best for them in the event they lose Horford or Porzingis in the playoffs to go small, to use some minutes with Tatum at the 5. Maybe you trust a Lamar Stevens or an O'Shea Brissett in that center role for just a short spurt during games in the postseason. So again, that makes it even easier to utilize their speed. They can team rebound to try and keep teams off the boards. And I think there are certainly positives that come with it. And maybe that's what they view as that layer of insurance.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can understand why the Celtics would want to add depth, right? You can understand why they would want to maybe beef up, but it's just the pathways to getting there that cause me like, really? Like, is that going to be it? And like most of the guys that would be available for the TPE, you look at and are they that much better than O'Shea Brissett and Lamar Stevens? Like, are they that much better than the guys they already have? And they would have to cut somebody to bring somebody in through the TPE, I believe, because I think they're at 15, right? So they would have to get rid of one of those guys in order to bring someone in.
I thought the spot was still open.
Yeah.
Is it still open? Am I crazy?
I believe it's still open.
I think Peterson got the last two-way spot.
Correct.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, they do have one. So I'm wrong on that front, at least. But I don't know. Anyways,
and even for someone who's thinking, well, what if they put Pritchard in a deal, but also got a point guard back, or they had a point guard lined up on the buyout market? The latter is more likely than the former because, again, you're adding salary in a trade if you get two players, obviously. Buyout market, at least it comes cheap. But the question is, are you willing to do that if you don't have something lined up with a point guard available on the buyout market that you would trust to get meaningful minutes in the playoffs, even with Holiday and Derek White ahead of that individual?
Yeah, I agree.
Plus, Pritchard's been real good. He's finally look consistent. So, like, even then, I'm like, do they really need to get rid of Pritchard?
I'd rather keep Pritchard.
Just give him time, man. He's ready to cook.
Agree.
I'd rather keep past PP.
All right. I think we covered it all. Thank you to everybody. Bobby, any final thoughts? Anything else you want to say before you jump out of here?
Yeah, I think we capped it.
Awesome. Well, in that case, thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure to check out Bobby's work at Inside the Celtics, Sports Illustrated Celtics site for SI Media Group. Make sure to subscribe to How About Them Celtics, and I'll let Sam take it out.
Yes, thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the How About Them Celtics page. You can hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more Talking C's, the full-length pods, game recaps, trade rumor breakdowns, film breakdowns, or the 30-minute pregame streams. We're live a half hour before every single game. You can read up on Bobby's work. He's there every game covering the team, as is Jack. Jack is on Celtics blog. Bobby is at Inside the Celtics for SI Media. You can get all the updates there. You can follow him on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. As for the show, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, hbtcpod@gmail.com. The socials are at How About Them C's. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Facebook page is just the name of the podcast. Our pregame streams are there, as well as on YouTube. You can follow Jack on Twitter at JackSwanNBA. You can follow me at Sam LaFrance NBA. That's it for us, Bobby.
Taco, come on. Taco.